Greetings, my friends. This is the brain of TV's Pinky in the Brain, and you are listening to This Week in Geek with Mike the Birdman Dodd and the rest of the Twig crew. Twigs. Come to think of it, Pinky, I've not used twigs in any of my latest plans for world domination. If this works, then Mike and the crew will rule by my side. Yes!
Did you grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Hello, it's that time again. Time for another episode. We've got a bunch this time. Over the last week or two, I've been collecting reviews that I've been recording. All quickie ones. They're ones that we couldn't fit in the main show because we try to fit the little bit meatier ones, or the ones that are we have a lot more to talk about. So these are the ones that range anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 minutes. There'll be a longer one in here of Mill Creek because we're covering a box they sent of things where I would have reviewed them individually initially, but they're all ones that the review box was a little late getting here because of how logistics are right now with COVID. So these are titles that were, for the most part, already out, and I wanted to make sure we could get them all out at once so that you could be informed as to whether or not you want to buy them before they, I guess, sell out of stock on Amazon or wherever. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge of TV shows, movies, video games. No, surprisingly, no headphones this time. There's going to be some coming soon. We'll be talking about them. But we'll get into that at a later time. At the end of the show, I'll sort of explain what we've got going on, because I think it's been a few weeks since we did an update on, what's new with us and, what we have in the works. Some things we can talk about, some things I can allude to but can't overtly say. So without further ado, we're going to go rapid fire and have all these reviews out here because we want to make sure that you hear about them.
Basically using geeks.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
Holy shit, you geeks are badass.
Alex here with a game review quickie. This is Assetto Corsa for the Xbox One. Specifically, it's the newest version, Assetto Corsa Competizione. My Italian should be coming out. Too bad I don't speak it fluently enough. This is the newest in the line of simulation Assetto Corsa racing games. I played it on the Xbox One X with 4K on. The game doesn't have HDR, but it does look quite good. It's on par with some of the graphics you're seeing on Forza, so that was pleasantly surprising. It is a game that you can't just gun it. Like, you're not going to just boom, go right away, because you will spin out. This is a simulation game. But I will say that I really like that it has a lot of the assistance and guides that you've come to like from the Forza series, where, not just the guiding arrow, but the arrow changes color if you're veering off to course or if you're staying on course, auto assists and all this. If you turn all that stuff off, you'll get more points, but you run the risk of damaging your vehicle or not finishing a race. Pretty standard stuff there, but I like it that a lot of the third-party companies are starting to adapt to that polished level that you see in a Forza or you see in a Gran Turismo. And it does have one thing. I noticed there was a bit of a loading screen when starting it up. I don't know if it's something that'll be patched out, but I waited like 2.5 minutes on my Xbox just to get into the game, which might have been a first-time startup because it happened a second time I did it, and the third time it didn't do it, so maybe it was caching something in the background. But that was one thing to note. Audio-wise, it's pretty good. You're not going to get like very high-end like licensed songs or anything, but the sounds of the motors, the sounds of when you're racing are all top class, high-tier stuff. It is a good game, but we are at a point now where we're getting close to when the next-gen consoles are coming out. So if you're a big fan of racing games, you might want to pick it up, but I'm sort of on the fence of recommending it because we're so close to next gen that I'm not sure if this is one of those games that's going to be automatically forwards compatible. If you're playing it on the Xbox One, it should be because they're saying it's going to be backwards compatible. So that's great. And it is a good enough engine that, if you said to somebody, hey, this is like a launch title on the next gen, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I can see that. So it is taking full advantage of what the Xbox One X can do. I don't know how well this plays on a standard Xbox, as I don't have the original VCR one. I did play it a bit on the S, and there was a noticeable drop in the frame rate, and obviously you couldn't play it in 4K. But it is a pretty solid racer, and if you've been waiting and wondering whether or not you should pick it up, this is probably going to be one of the last high-end racers on the platform. So if you're not going to get the next-gen system right away, then pick it up. If you are, you might want to wait. Braveheart has just had the 4K remastered experience done, and I had a chance. Birdman didn't have a 4K player ready to watch it, so he's like, Alex, check this out. Would you like to watch Braveheart for review? And I said, I haven't seen Braveheart since I was like 13 years old. Yes, I would. So he handed it to me last time I had a chance to see him, and I popped it in my 4K player and was blown away. I remembered that it was good, but I also had thought for the longest time it was kind of melodramatic, and they had overdone replaying clips, the freedom scene and all that over and over again, and the music is kind of cheesy and corny when you watch it in clip form. But I forgot it's taken out of context. As you're watching the movie and it builds, it's a very emotional scene, very well done. It is obviously one of Mel Gibson's better films. As far as the film goes, enough has been said about it, but how does the 4K version work? The tone mapping is good. It's significantly different looking. The flesh tones are a little more muted. It's even with, if you have watching it with HDR tone mapping on, great. If you're not watching it like that, it still looks better than the standard Blu-ray, which is showing its age now. Like they include the Blu-ray discs 1 and 2 for the special features that were previously released years ago, and they are starting to show their age in the days of 4K and modern Blu-ray setups. So I guess they just chose not to do a new scan, or when they redid the 4K scan of this, they didn't just downstep that into a new Blu-ray pressing. I think they just here's the new one for 4K and for streaming, and here's the old discs. And that, it's a little disappointing, but then again, you're buying a 4K release, and even if you don't have a 4K player yet, you're obviously buying it for the future-proofing aspect of it, which is pretty sweet. Now, there is supposed to be a steelbook of it available coming out. We didn't get that for review. I think Birdman might get that later, and he might talk about it. But the standard disc comes in a regular black emery case, just like a lot of the other standard 4K releases. It's got a flip tray in there, and luckily it's not one of the newer style ones that I noticed where they're really flimsy and break. It is a little more sturdy than some of the Blu-ray cases out there. Disc 1 is your 4K disc. There is a digital code that you can redeem on iTunes. Then they have disc 2 and 3 are the Blu-ray feature film and the feature film special features that were produced previously. The disc 1 also includes a commentary, which is good because not every 4K disc does that. But all the other special features are not on the 4K disc. You have to pop in your original 1080p disc, and it's fine. Unless they're producing new 4K stuff or they remastered it, there's no point in doing that. Pretty solid release. If you're a fan of the film, pick it up. These are sort of tent-pole 4K releases we're getting now. A lot of the epics are coming out. So this was one that was on the radar. We did Gladiator before, and when we heard that this was coming out and got a chance to review it, we jumped on it because it's these big budget epics where you'll really see if they stand the test of time visually with the upgrades, and it does. It looks like a much more cinematic experience at home now than it used to. Calypso Entertainment sent over a review code for both Steam and PlayStation 4 for Dungeons 3, the complete collection. Now, that includes every expansion they've released previously, so I think by now you'll probably know whether or not you like Dungeons, where the gameplay style of it, a little bit of defending, a little bit of building, a little bit of everything out there PC-wise. How does it translate to the PlayStation, though? The controls are pretty good. It is still better, I think, with keyboard and mouse playing it on the PC, but it is a great value in that you get every expansion they released for it, 7 story campaigns, like full campaigns. And that's kind of amazing considering the, you would have had to pay more for that as they came out initially. So it is coming out at the end of a life cycle of console. So, one advantage is, remember, any game that comes out after it was like the beginning of June has to work on the next gen. So I guess the assumption is that you get this on the PS4, it'll work on the PS5 and probably run a little smoother. I didn't encounter any issues playing it on the PS4 Pro. On the PC, it ran even better because I was able to take advantage of different resolution, ultra wide, and all that sort of stuff. So you'll have no issues there if you get it on PC. My biggest concern was how well is it going to play on the PlayStation, and overall it did a pretty good job. No issues with it. Not much more I can say other than it is a ton of content, and if you like that style of game, you're going to like this.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
It's been a while since we received a package from Mill Creek due to COVID and everything that was going on. The regular way we received had sort of slowed down, and we had been covering whatever we got, but I recently was surprised to see a box show up with a bunch of randomized titles, it seemed, of the ones I guess we were supposed to get over the last several weeks, but were all sent at once, which is sweet. Everybody loves getting a treasure box of movies and Japanese Ultraman TV shows to check out. So I'm going to just go over them sort of in a group setting because I watched them all in one weekend for review and just sort of collected my thoughts on them. In the box, I received the next 2 titles of the Andy Sedaris movie collection, and we've talked about them. They're coming out in pairs, all remastered. Those are the series that has the Hard Ticket to Hawaii movie in it, for anybody that was wondering. So ridiculous, over-the-top 90s B-movie action gold. In fact, one of them is called Enemy Gold, and the Dallas Connection is also included in these 2 most recent releases. They are some of the better ones in the series. The remastering on them is pretty good. This is when they had switched over to shooting a little more on, I guess what you'd call, it's not video, but it's like cheaper television movie cameras, because the first 4 or 5 in the movie series are using cinematic cameras, you can tell. And I almost feel like this adds to the effect. It includes all the special features that were on the previously way outdated and out-of-print DVDs, digital copies for each film so you can watch it on the Movie Spree platform that Mill Creek owns, and even remastered versions of the trailers, which are pretty sweet to see. So you already know my stance on those. Those are fantastic. We're just waiting on the last few to come out before we can sort of do a watch of it. I know that Birdman and I are going to on the Loose Cannon B movie show that we're working on. We're probably going to be doing a series of reviews on these films, the Andy Sedaris ones. We'll probably have Aaron Paulier on because he's a huge fan as well, and Birdman sort of only knows of the clips he's seen of like Hard Ticket to Hawaii when all the reviewers were doing that back 10 years ago or more. So it'll be interesting to see him watch the whole storyline of these movies progress. Now, also included was a couple 2-packs. There was The Man from the Alamo, and they came to Cordura. Cordura. That's right. I'm having tongue-tied moments here, people. These are 2 Western films that are one is a little more remastered than the other, and they are put on individual discs, so you're not having to worry about them, putting them on, like cramming them onto one single layer. They could have fit on a dual layer disc, I think, because they're two single layer things, because I put them in my computer and it pops up in Windows. It's like, here's how large the disc is. So they could have done that, but they're smart because I guess they could package them in other packages later on. Between the two movies, the Man from the Alamo was probably better. If you're not into old school westerns, you might want to skip it, but it is a cheap movie, in the $10-15 range, depending on where you get it, to get both of them. So if you like old school westerns, you're looking for a gift for some family members that do, they're probably worth it. Then the other 2-pack of older style movies was the Hollywood Story, and the other one included on there was New Orleans Uncensored, and they're film noir movies. So if you like film noir movies, these are ones I hadn't seen, and they are pretty well acted. It's not like as hokey as some of the other stuff was from that time period. Black and white, looks good, remastered. All these movies are like stereo or mono, usually mono, but it's like dual mono split between 2 speakers. No special features, just wham bam, here's the movies. Again, for a bargain bin price, they're worth picking up if you're a big fan of film noirs. And the film noirs, I think, hold up better than a lot of westerns, because westerns can look cheap with the sets they use, unless it's like a high budget John Wayne movie or something. White Crane Chronicles was included in here. That was longer than I expected. That was actually 2 parts. It's like a TV movie, or it could have been 2 separate movies, but the way it's edited together here, it's like 2 parts of one miniseries or one movie. 3-hour movie with some famous B actors, and David Carradine sort of doing his kung fu thing in it. A later movie in his career. This one, to be honest, unless you're a big fan of his, it's a skip. It's not very good. It's a rental. So if you are a fan of his, or if you're unsure if you want to buy it, I'm pretty sure you can get it digitally just by going to Movie Spree and checking it out there for purchase. It'll be cheaper than getting it physical. But if you are a fan of his and you want it for your collection, go ahead. It wasn't really a thing. It wasn't a movie I liked personally. Then there was one of the more interesting things in here, which is the H-Man and Battle in Outer Space. Those are 2 Japanese science fiction disaster films, and interestingly, on both there is an English and Japanese version. And I'm not talking like you can just flip the dub of Japanese to English. Each movie is cut differently, sort of like what they used to do with Godzilla back in the day. So the English version is usually a few minutes shorter, or they'll have extra scenes put in. Some of the voice acting is very, we've got to sound Asian, but we're not Asian. But that is a piece of the time, and you can't really blame them for trying to bring the films over at that time. That's just sort of a slice of life. You can't get mad at everything because, I don't like how it's done in today's context. At the time, that was the only way to watch it, and it wasn't considered, insensitive. I like the fact that they included both versions, so if you don't like the English dub, or if you're somebody who doesn't like, you can't follow subtitles because you have a harder time reading it or processing it, there is a dub for you. So there's available to both, and it is interesting to see both. One of them is actually significantly shorter, like we're talking 74 minutes versus 95. And the other is the same length, but with a couple scenes changed here and there. Between the 2 films, Battle in Outer Space is probably more exciting. The H-Man is certainly interesting. Both are filmed in like CinemaScope Ultra Wide, which is cool, and they look far better remastered and preserved because they're Toho films than the other Columbia Pictures and other titles that were in the 2-packs. It's clear that they were preserved in a vault, and they're considered upper end films of their genre in Japan. There's also a package included here that I was going through, and I watched, to be honest, about 60% of the films in this 10 movie pack, because I sort of left them on and go. It's a 2-disc pack of DVDs called The Deadly Place, and it's a lot of TV movies or syndicated cuts of horror films ranging from the 70s, a lot in the 80s, some in the early 90s. Some are good, some are not. A lot of these are full screen, so keep that in mind if you're watching on a widescreen TV. It looks fine when you blow it up to a big screen, but some of these prints are kind of rough. But it is, what do you expect? It's one of those, you go into Walmart, you find it for $3 to $5, you get 10 movies sort of deals. Some famous actors in them, Karen Black and some others from the 70s and 80s. Worth a watch if you're a horror fan. I'm pretty sure our friend Andrew Roebuck would love to pick something like this up, because these are the kind of releases that probably aren't going to get a Blu-ray release until way later, if there is one, because if they're using a full screen cut, it's probably the only cut that still exists. And the final thing in the box, which is what I was watching the most of, was they included Ultraman Ace, which had been, I think, delayed initially, and that's the next release in the Ultraman series, as they're releasing every single one in order as they come out, because they have that license deal. In this one, we start to see an increase in visual quality compared to the earliest series, and I like seeing that progression as it goes. There's 52 episodes in this series, so a little more than some of the others. The box also has a little booklet, like their other releases have had, where it covers the production of it with episode synopsis. And I believe there might have been a Steelbook edition available for this. That was a pre-order only. I didn't receive that for review, but I haven't received any of the Steelbooks for these for review. So it's going to go on my shelf with all the other Ultraman stuff, because, as I've said before, Ultraman was one of my first loves of this style of film. Like, I didn't know that they were all sort of connected, or that they were Japanese. I just remember watching Superhuman Samurai back in the 90s, and we're slowly making our way towards getting to that show. So once we get there, I'll be super happy owning that, because very few of these have been adapted into the States. So as we're working our way up, it's going to be nice. I was happy to see that it came in and they were able to get it out, because sometimes these multi-disc releases are a pain for logistically when they're trying to get the rights out of other countries with COVID going on. So it's nice to see that these are there. Out of all of them, I would say the only one that was a pass for me, if you know, I wasn't a big fan of, was the White Crane Chronicles, which is just not my style of movie. It wasn't very entertaining. Deadly Place might put you off if you don't like full screen stuff anymore. But other than that, everything else there was pretty solid, and they're all, like Mill Creek stuff, very, very good value-priced items. Ultracore is one of those Euro run-and-gun shooters that was supposed to come out in the 90s. I believe it was Psygnosis was making it, and they canceled it. Well, In Games has finished the title, reworked it for modern consoles, and it's out on the PlayStation 4 and the Switch. I had a chance to pick up and play it and for review, and it is a hard game. It brings me back to the days of the early 90s when these games were quite hard, and you'd rent one for the weekend and just play and just hope to get past the first couple of levels. It's hard, but not punishing. Like, it was not, it wasn't canceled because it was too difficult. It was canceled because they just chose not to move forward with the project initially, and it was almost a complete game. So now we've got it reworked. The audio sounds very, Sega 90s. The graphics look good, redone on modern consoles, and the big thing for me was, how is it going to feel when you're actually playing with the controller? And it's solid. Nothing feels slippery or no gravity feels off. You're able to shoot in any direction you hold your button in, like your directional pad, and fire. There's jump. There's your standard attacks. Things will keep respawning if you don't move. So it is a very 90s game that way. It's very pretty. It almost feels like what you would think of when you're like, oh, I'm going to make a new retro-style game. Well, this is an old game that's now brought to the modern day. It's sort of a flip on that. So it is fun to play if you're a old-school action, like run-and-gun platform shooter fan. It's something to check out. It works probably best on the Switch, where I ended up playing it and enjoying it, but I think the visuals look better on a smaller screen, sort of blown up on a huge TV, and the ability to take it on the go and play that way would be cool. But if you're not too keen on always playing it that mode, the PS4 version is going to do you just right too.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
I've been spending the last week or so trying out Warborn on the PlayStation 4. I know it's out on other platforms, but that's where P-Cube sent over a review copy for me, and it fits quite well. It is something, I will say this before I even go, I might have preferred playing it on a portable platform. only because I do like playing strategy games where I can play a mission or two, pick up and play when I'm on the bus or in transit or something. But I was playing from bed on the PlayStation, and I had a pretty good time playing sort of a mission or two per night. It is a tactical RPG with mecha hand-drawn elements. Pretty cool. You're able to customize, build your characters up as you want. It's like an indie front mission hex grid type game. Good story, pretty good audio, very well done actually, and worth your time if you're a big fan of strategy RPGs and you like mecha and sci-fi stories. A lot of the game amounts to, wiping out certain areas. It's the standard conditions of tactical RPGs, so it's like capture this quadrant and control it. Don't lose all your lives. Certain people have to survive. You may have an escort mission here and there. It's pretty standard fare, except that we haven't seen a whole lot from non-Japanese developers that are doing the mecha style for it, and it's sort of a very Western take on the mecha sci-fi tactical RPG. I would say it's worth picking up, especially since it's been on the cheaper end and it can go on sale. If you're looking for something to play a few hours at a time and you'll get a lot of replayability out of it, this is one to check out. I was sent a Stadia code to review the, I believe, just recently released Wave Break from Funktronic Labs. Now, what is it? It's sort of a hybrid of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. It's like skateboarding, but with like wave race mechanics, like almost like a Nintendo Wii /N64 aesthetic, where you're doing all the crazy stunts like grinding and doing all the flips and spins and all the crazy stuff that I don't know all the terminology for, but you're doing it from like a skidoo. So it's got quite a unique look and feel to it. Pretty fun. Worked quite well on the actual Stadia platform. It is a game that lends itself to being a part of the streaming ecosystem. It's not like overly detailed. It's not hyper realistic. It's a cartoony game. I played it on PC, going through Chrome browser for it with the Stadia controller, and I also played it using the Chromecast Ultra that comes with Stadia in another room. I did notice that it played a little better in my browser, and that might just be due to being wired internet versus the wireless only that I had in the other room. But overall, it was pretty good. I was able to make sure that I got the best performance out of it. I was able to change my settings down in Stadia so that it only plays at 1080p, because I'm not noticing a huge difference between the compression algorithm of 1080p and 4K. It just uses more bandwidth, and you might have more latency there. So overall, it worked better, 1080p wired. And there's leaderboards. It's got players. It's not like it's not got its fans, and it's pretty good so far. It's something I can pick up and play for about 10 minutes at a time. It might be something worth checking out if they've got it on discount in the store.
Those magnificent bastards!
Color me kooky, but something very odd is going on around here.
You're not allowed to talk anymore.
All right, thanks for sitting through all that. That's going to do it for the show, but what's coming up next for This Week in Geek? Yes, we're still working on the website. Yes, we're still working on the loose cannon. We did, Birdman and I, watch a few things to get prepared to record. We're just in the process of getting things ready. The website being worked on it's sort of not on hold, but we're just waiting for the beginning of the month where we can get some money so we can commission some work to be done for some graphics. We have some of the back-end stuff done. We just got to pay our licenses, because remember, you actually have to license certain technologies when you're releasing them publicly, especially if you're going to be releasing it as a business and not just on a personal site where people just pirate everything. This is us having to be on the up and up. So that's coming soon. As far as what we recorded or what we got ready, we're doing for the first episode of Loose Cannon is still going to be the one on Sharknado. We got some interview stuff to put in there as well. We sat through and got prepared to record the next episode, which is going to be American Ninja. and then we're getting the process made to make some more stuff. I know there's some Nerd to the Third stuff coming soon, and there might be some other syndicated things. We're taking a bit of a break from some of the other syndicated programming because we want to get more of the website back-end stuff done. But as far as what things are being reviewed, I am working on a fairly lengthy review. It's probably going to be a special all into itself because I'll be talking about networking and how the newest wireless mesh systems work. I'm going through a fairly extensive testing without the system with what I currently have, which is like the built-in Wi-Fi from my ISP, with one of the units turned on, with all 3 units turned on, with 2 of them being in wireless mode as just repeaters, and then also drilling holes through walls to run brand new cable that I'm making myself. Got the raw cabling, going to have to do the twisted pair cabling, crimping, all that stuff, to then have all 3 of the mesh units wired in so that they can then they all have a signal, they then broadcast themselves and make the proper mesh signal. So the idea will be to sort of try and run it, see how they work, see if there's any interference, see if I can break it. By breaking it, I mean, can I crash it by having so much going at once? Also need to make sure I get some Wi-Fi 6 devices in here to test with them. There's going to be another one where it might be, depending on how it's reviewed or how long it takes to review it, it might be a separate special or on the show of Thunderbolt docks. I've got one coming that's going to be interesting because I can use some devices I have to test it, but my brother's going to bring over his new Mac, which is what it's designed for, so we can test it out with that. That's going to be in the mail, so that's coming soon. As far as other hardware, there's going to be some more headphones coming because it's the summer of headphones right now. There and some special stuff there too. Maybe some unique early items that most people might not have. We might be the first in Canada to get them, which will be something interesting. Still working on sitting down with Birdman. We're probably going to watch next time I visit him the Gunsmith Cats release that I got in the mail. So we'll watch that. I might review it by myself. We might do it as a joint review. I'm not 100% sure yet, but we're going to watch that. On top of that, I'm not sure exactly what he has on the go. He's got a few things he's working on that we'll talk in person about. I have the game Scully, which is that sort of hand-drawn action platformer. I'm reviewing that on Steam right now. I've got early access to that. That should be coming this coming week. There's also going to be from me. What else have I got that I can talk about? And what can't I talk about is probably better. Oh, I have. Depending on when this releases, I'll be talking about the Nintendo Pokemon expansion. That's probably on this week's show. Then I'm also talking about. Let me see. When's my embargo up? I can talk about the Stadia game creation platform Creta. I actually sat in on a fairly exclusive press presentation of that and how it works. It's pre-built games, but also a game engine that you can make by either scripting it, by dragging and dropping, or coding yourself, and some pretty cool stuff around that. The review embargo goes up when our regular show goes, so I'll have that in the show this week. And I have one large title that I can't talk about until sometime this week that I will be digging into hardcore. Very excited for it. So be listening in for that later on. And that's going to do it for the show. We've got other things. If you have any questions, for any of the titles we've talked about or suggestions for the site, I think in the future the relaunch of the website is also going to include more news. We're going to probably start putting more press releases directly on there. There'll be more of there'll be a text dedicated section, so it won't just be links to the podcasts every single time or just our gift guides. We are going to probably start having at least a method for when we receive a press release to schedule and have that press release go live. So you'll be able to stick to our site, and we'll announce when things like that happen, where it's like big press releases. We'll pop on there and start populating it. We might even get some written reviews in for things that might require a little more in-depth, that sort of stuff. A little more, regular reporting news type content rather than just the audio. Maybe some video popped in there too. That way we can give some context to some of the things that don't translate necessarily super well just to audio, so we can take pictures of things and show things off. Pretty standard stuff, but the current setup we have for the website wasn't really designed for that, so that's part of the idea of when we're designing the new site is we want to make sure that it can have that aspect ideally. So that's it. I guess I'll be back in a couple days with Birdman here, and it's going to be an interesting show. I know Birdman's been collecting the news, and he said, Alex, be prepared. There's a lot. So we'll have to see about that in a couple days.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.